seen my share, broken halo, folded wings that used to fly. They've all gone, wherever they go, broken halos that used to shine.
Hey everybody, Master Craftsman Sam back here with another installment on the Hanging a Door series. So today we hang some 3.5-inch double bullnose trim. We go through 2 full doors worth of trim, and then the camera malfunctioned or ran out or something. But anyway, we got 2 full doors worth of casing here. So we'll be able to show that. And then next up in the series, or in the series of series, would be the egress window. We're going to have, we're going to jam it up, and then we're going to case it out. But today we're just going to nail everything up with door casing. So enjoy this video. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, please let me know. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, and click the bell for notifications on any new videos. Without further ado, here's door casing number 3. Thank you. Hey everybody, back again. We got the casing all spread out. Everything's ready to nail on. We got our head case placed in front of each door, as you see. Put everything back where it goes after you cut it, and match it back up. First we're going to nail on the head case. And you're just going to get that lined up right in the middle there. Give one nail on each corner first. And then I like to do a couple of nails in between, right in the jamb. Staggered out. This door is kind of big, so I'm going to do an extra. I'm being careful not to shoot through the jamb there. Once you shoot through the jamb, then you got a thing to fix. You got to get out your tools and go ahead and yank the nail out, or do whatever you can to just make it look good and try and fill your hole back up. It's a mess. And you can nail your door shut. We're going to pop one in each corner and one in the middle. So the ones that go into the jamb are 1¼ inch brad nails. What I'm using here to go around the outside of the jamb, outside of the door opening rather, would be 2-inch finish nails. We use 2.5-inch finish nails to set the door. For door casing, we use 2-inch finish nails. Alternatively, you could use 2-inch brad nails. Most painters will prefer this, but your trim will not be as strong in the long run. In my experience, most painters don't care. One hole is one hole. It's just a tiny bit more spackle per hole. If your painter is kind of finicky or kind of complaining, you might not do that. in this case, I know the painter very well, so not a problem. I'm going to bow that out, as you see. Press it tight to the jamb. Make sure it's real tight down there. That's a stiff painter's knife. A stiff painter's knife will really come in handy right now. You'll notice I'm putting a brad nail, a 1 1/4 inch brad nail, about every foot, maybe 10 inches. And as I go, I see where everything starts bowing out, and when it bows out, I just add another nail there. Maybe press on it, maybe pry on the other side. There's lots of ways to get trim to move. Just make it move to where you need it and trap it with a nail. Put one in each corner, a 2-inch finish nail in each corner. This joint is looking pretty great, honestly. I give it a little bit of glue, smush it right down in there. That glue smush, like, just kind of get it down in the crack, and then do your working. When a little bit of working and tapping and getting everything perfect will save you sanding, and it will make your trim overall have more primer on each joint. When you have primer sanded off, sometimes you will see straight through the first layer of paint if the painter hasn't done his or her job right. That's what you want to avoid, is taking all the primer off. But in certain instances where a joint is really giving you heck, just sand it all off and get it flush. It's better to have it flush and nice and pretty and make the painter do a little extra work to make your stuff look good than to have it just look bad for all eternity. Notice I sand pretty fast. The faster you sand, the faster you can move on. I take about a 5-inch by 2-inch piece of sandpaper, a 240 grit. 240 grit will give you enough grit to really get some purchase on your primer and get it all sanded off there and get it smooth. I would suggest if you're doing stained trim work, once you're done with your 240 grit, maybe move on to a 320 grit and give it a light sanding. Also, if you're going to be sanding anything where you'll have wood grain, always sand with the grain. If you sand against the grain, then you'll have scratch marks that are very visible. Three and a half inch casing is much harder to deal with than 2-inch casing. Most places will use 2-inch casing. That's more common. But as time progresses, I'm noticing more and more people want 5-inch base and 3.5-inch double bullnose casing. It's very, very popular. Most casing I've dealt with is double bullnose. However, I've dealt with a lot of profiled trim.
this profiled trim is a different animal entirely. And one day soon I'll show you a video on how my old teacher, the master carpenter of 35 years that I learned from, how he does his casing. It is not anything that I do on a regular basis because I just don't run into very much profiled trim in the work that I do. Most of what I do has been in apartments, in some custom homes. I've done at least one custom home where the casing was profiled on my own, but most people don't have that. Notice I'm pounding on it, but what I'm doing is keeping my hammer very flat. The flatter you keep it, the less dents you'll make. You don't want dents. We are sanding this, however, so if you do make a dent with your hammer, you can still fix that. Maybe grab a little spackle, throw it right on there. It's not a big deal, but try very hard to hit the trim with your hammer flush and make no dent. If you can hit it directly on, it shouldn't make a dent. Okay, see there, I tighten everything up by giving it a quick hit on the top. The top, it basically will force the whole joint down, and then you trap it with a nail most of the time. Sometimes I won't trap it with a nail after I give it a tap. It just depends on how I feel about the joint. You get a sense for what will move and what won't move. Mostly, door casing is going to be done by feel. See there? I'm just slamming my gun right against the trim, make sure the nail's set fully down. But if I were nailing that top joint, I would gently insert a nail just by squeezing the trigger and gently pressing, because I know when I do that, if I slam my gun against the trim, it's going to slam that trim back, and when it does, it's going to mess my joint completely up, and then I'll have to fix it, which is doable but not preferable. To fix these joints, you're going to want to use a stiff painter's knife like I showed you just a little bit earlier. You can pry behind it, and then you can fix it in the front with sandpaper. You can give it a little extra glue. Once it catches some dust, becomes sort of like a putty. It dries hard. Now, the difference between putty and spackle dries soft, but when you paint over it, it doesn't really matter. It retains its integrity. But when you use putty, it dries hard. So just know the difference between the two, and have a little bit of both in your kit. This door's looking great now. We're going to move on in and do the other side. Now remember, this side had a rip, so we're going to have to probably adjust our head casing to fit if we hadn't already, but we have already. It's got a flat side on that side, so I'm butting it directly against the drywall on that left side. Now it's a little off. See me tap there? That'll help me get it right. Those little 1 1/4 inch brad nails, they don't do a whole lot. They're just to keep everything in place until the painter comes to caulk the door. Once the painter caulks the casing to the jamb, it makes your door incredibly strong. Your casing will not move after that. It seems a bit counterintuitive to let the painter be the one who actually strengthens your trim. But the other alternative is having trim carpenters go around and do a painter's job. You'll notice things aren't lining up here. So what we're going to do is take that back to the saw. Trim that right off. First I'm going to try and bump it. See what happens. Not looking good. Won't happen. We're going to go ahead and saw off about an 1/8 inch. We do this freehand, very carefully. Do not push that thing in there and bind up your blade, because it will kick back. If you're not familiar with how to use a table saw and what kickback is, I would encourage you to look at some videos about that. Kickback will literally throw that piece of trim through the drywall on the other side of the wall. Table saw has a lot of power, so when it kicks back, watch out. Be sure that there's no debris underneath where you're working. Make sure the casing is sitting flush against the jamb before we nail it all up. That's looking much better. We're going to pop 2 in the top, 1 in the bottom, and then work our way up about 10 inches at a time. Also, inserting nails wherever things just don't look right. If it's not sinking back to the jamb, I might put 10 nails in that spot. But that's just my job. Make everything strong, make everything work. This particular door that I'm working on is inside of a closet. It's inside of a closet that won't have very much use. If it were inside a walk-in closet, I'd treat it just the same as any other door. Technically this is walk-in, but it's underneath the stairs, and you'll have to duck immediately as you walk in. I just don't feel that it's necessary to get this joint absolutely perfect, so I'll just get it as good as I can without doing too much to it. And here I'm pointing out the fact that that cut is not a very nice looking cut, but that won't matter because the painter is going to come in and fill that right up with caulking and fix everything. So cutting without a guard on a table saw, or rather cutting without the fence on a table saw, will end you up with some rough cuts, but that's okay. As long as it's up against that drywall, that painter can just cut it, or caulk it right over. There, I didn't think my gun was shooting a nail. Always be sure and make sure that the nails are sinking and that they are feeding. Your nail gun may not feed the nails correctly sometimes. When it does that, I suggest you use a spray that I'll link in the description. It's called silicone dry lube. Silicone dry lube. That silicone dry lube basically keeps everything dry while also lubricating. With air tools, with other tools, battery operated and so on, sometimes it's much better to not have a wet lube like a WD-40. You want silicone dry lube. You'll notice I'm giving that a good whack as I'm going down. That one actually accidentally hit a screw, probably, so the nail started to curl. We give it a nice flat tap and then grab my sandpaper, sand it smooth. We're also going to insert another nail down there because that nail, since it curled, probably didn't grab anything. Here we are on the next door. My camera malfunctioned and I lost some of the work on that other side of this door. But here we are. We got the head case installed. We're trying to line everything up and we notice maybe it's not lining up perfect. So we're going to take this piece back to the saw. Give it about a 3/16 trim. Now that we got about 3/16 cut off there, maybe an 1/8 inch, it should go just fine in there. And maybe leave just a hair of a gap, which the painter can caulk. We have to make sure that all our work lines up perfectly. If you don't line everything up perfectly, I can almost guarantee you, you will look back at your work and say, that is junk. There's really no tolerance for gap on these miters. These miters have to be perfect, unless they're inside of a closet that nobody will ever enter. That's the only time I ever give myself any leeway with getting a perfect casing miter. Because let's face it, some doors, the only person that would ever see the inside of that miter might be a small child just hiding in the closet or something. but we still get it all installed the same way, even if it's not a walk-in closet. It just wouldn't be something I would really have to spend much time on. One idea that I see a lot for walk-in or non-walk-in closets is the trimmer will just cut a straight header, straight head case, and then make his sides just butt up to the bottom instead of doing a mitered cut. That's acceptable work for some builders, but be sure and check with your builder first. Notice as I'm sanding this off, I'm moving my hand very fast, and then I'll stop moving it as fast and really dig in. I really dig in where I know I need to remove more material, and I really move fast where I know I need to smooth everything out.
I got a good bead of glue on that one. You want to keep it nice and glued up, but don't slop it on. If it gets sloppy, you'll have so much running all over the place. It gets to be a problem. But if you get any extra glue, you can always put it on the reverse side of your trim and glue it to the wall on the drywall paper. That'll help keep everything in place over time. Get a little bit of squeeze out going here. Got to get 2 nails in the top, and we'll get our bottom going. And looks like I just ran out of nails. You'll kind of hear when your gun starts to dry fire, and you'll keep your finger against that trim as you're working your way up. So that way you'll kind of notice when the trim doesn't get sucked back to the jam. We're going to get our sandpaper out and force a little glue down into the crack of that miter. I like to wipe my glue right here on the inside of my tool belt. The reason for that is having extra stuff like a rag in your tool belt or anything like that tends to get, dirty and nasty, that kind of thing. I think it's best to just sacrifice a bit of leather and wipe your glue. What I'm doing is saving myself from having to spackle at all. I hardly ever use spackle. We're making a paste, basically. Paste made of glue and the white primer. So it just fills everything in, much like putty. Well, that's about it for this video. Just notice as I sand this off, I'm going to go straight across the miter to smooth everything out. Please like, share, subscribe, and click the bell, and leave a comment.
If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks very much. Have a great day, everybody.